All right, shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rachak Kodash. Double honors to the elder apostles, the elder bishops, the elders of Great Millstone who very well, very beautifully. Double salutations be unto the Akim, out here pushing this gospel and truth and in sincerity to the best of their ability, given to them by Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, peace, blessings, and salutations be unto the elect scattered abroad. May the election of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Lord willing, fall upon your houses. This is Brother Quanawath coming back at you, Lord will, with the edifying lesson through the spirit and power of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Lord will. It is edifying, Lord will. It is straight to the point. And this lesson is going to be an MO to the TB, update, right? Esau is making his moves, man, right? And we know that pursuant to Revelations 12 and 12, right? Esau knows that he has a short time, right? So we're starting to see this devil, ultimately panic and ultimately try to, rush, right? The process when it comes to these different acts, such as the Clarity Act, right? To be passed and established, as well as he's ultimately introducing, right? And passing, and signing different executive orders, right? Into play, right? Which will ultimately, again, benefit, his plan here, his agenda, right? His agenda is to ultimately get everyone, right, on the face of the earth, right, to receive this MARK, right, which we know in the Greek is what? Charagma, right, which we know is the RFID micro C-hip. That's his agenda, that's his goal, right? And this is something starting with the elder apostles, right, of Great Millstone on down, right? Something that we've been telling y'all for years, that this is what, he is ultimately trying to do. And more, right, as the days go on, right, it's irrefutable, right? You cannot just say that the MO to the TB is, anything other than the RFID, micro C hit, man. You even got which the elder apostle Remlob, he ultimately called it, right? You got a Bishop Nate from the IUIC, Bishop Nathaniel from the IUIC, ultimately, and his, the leadership of IUIC, they're being forced, right? As well as, the leadership of ISUPK, just the leadership of these different camps, right? That are ultimately, not necessarily, telling you, right, what the MO to the TB is. Now they're having to speak on it, man. Now they're having to speak on it because it's being made manifest, right? Even these regular peon, pagan Christians, right, are starting to, talk about it, mention it, Granted, they don't have the truth, but they are starting to mention it, more and more, But first and foremost, right, we understand that through the spirit and power of the Heavenly Father, Yahweh, and his only beloved begotten Son, Yahweh Shai, right, our elder apostles, right, had it right first, right, as well as us men that have come up under them, right, in our proper order, right. We've been telling y'all, right, we've been telling y'all exactly what the MO to the TB is, and we're telling you that it is the RFID microchip, right. I didn't mean to say it, but fuck it, it's the RFID microchip, man. Something that they're going to ultimately be trying to put within your body, And I do have an article, right, which we're going to grab, but I want to start right here. This is Habakkuk 2:1. It says, I will stand upon my watch and set me upon the tower, and will watch to see what he will say unto me, and what I shall answer when I am reproved. And this is what we're doing, right? We're watching, right? Constantly being, in our watchtower, looking around, paying attention, right? To see ultimately, what Esau's next moves are, right? And then we're ultimately taking, those moves, right? Whether it be, him doing these different, so-called miracles, right? Putting the C-hips into, these different patients in these hospitals and connecting them to the BCI, the brain computer interface, right? Which is spoken of in Revelations, the 13th chapter, right? The 14th verse, right? Those miracles, right? Where people are able to see, people are able to, interact with, electronics, People are able to walk again, so on and so forth, right? Those are those different, again, miracles, right? Which they're not real miracles, right? It's a miracle on the left-hand side, right? Through this technology, right? We're seeing all the different policies and legislation that are being introduced, such as, again, the Stable Act, right? The Genius Act, right? And currently in process, right? The Clarity Act, which they're kind of, they're trying to, act like they're not gonna, pass it or, but we understand what's going on, man. We know that it will be established. It will be, how many revisions that they try to do or anything like that. We understand that according to prophecy, right? Whether they have to discard that act and create another one, we understand that it's going to be established, And see, this is what we're watching and paying attention to, right? And doing what? Verse 2, and Yahweh, Bahashim Yahushai, answered me and said, write the vision and make it plain upon tables that he may run that readeth it, right? We're making it easy for you to understand, right? The prophets do all the heavy lifting, if you will. Right? We do all the heavy lifting and we ultimately bring it back to you people and let you know what time it is. And we're in the time where this prophecy, Revelations 13, verse 16 on down, is coming. Revelations the 13th chapter, period, right? Is coming to pass, man. Right? Verse 3, it says, for the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak and not lie, though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come, it will not tarry. Now I want to grab that word vision, right, which we've done before, right? Strong's H2377, Chazon, it says, or Kazon, however they say it, right? It says vision, right? Vision, oracle, prophecy, right? Divine communication, right? Divine communication. These are the different signs that the Lord, right, ultimately told us, right, to pay attention to, right? So that way we know, again, what time it is, man. Right? Right? A prophecy, right? So let's get into this article. This is on the Newsbreak app, right? Better America. It says Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent confirms executive order requiring citizens verification for all bank customers, right? It says Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent confirmed this week that a high-stake executive order requiring banks to verify the citizenship of all customers is officially in process. The move, which shifts the burden of immigration enforcement onto the private financial sector, marks the end of a decades-long standard where identity, not legal status, governed access to the American economy, right? You just pull out your ID card, or maybe a bank statement, or maybe a piece of mail that has your name, and all these different ways of confirming that you have residency, rather than your status, your legal status, whether you're a citizen, whether you're a green card holder, whether you're asylum seeker, or whatever it may be. Right now they're moving to that. Right now they're moving to, they want to be able to see your status. Is it Bessent's remarks on April 15th moved the proposal from internal rumor to active policy development, while the administration frames the measures as a tool for visibility and control, right? So they're telling you right there, right? For visibility and control. They want to be able to see who is in the country and in what status they are, and whether they're going to allow them to hold that bank account or not, right? It says industry experts, because it's all about control, right? It says industry experts warn it functions as a sweeping paperwork test for millions of Americans. Unlike existing Know Your Customer or the KYC rules that rely on driver's license, the new mandate is expected to explicitly exclude real IDs. So these different real IDs that they were telling you that you had to have, right, in order to, get onto, the airplanes or travel anywhere, right? They were forcing people to get these new IDs, right? Now they're saying that that's not even going to work, right? They're moving on to the next phase, right? It says, which proves lawful presence but not citizenship, requiring instead a U.S. passport, naturalization certificate, or birth certificate. Again, proving your citizenship, right? Because we understand that they've been coming after those who are, which now they're coming after naturalized citizens, those who moved here and ultimately, became citizens, they're coming after the citizens, man. Just period, point blank. Right? We're seeing this move heavy, but see this right here, this is ultimately a move, right, in the direction of taking the RFID microchip, right, mandatory in order to participate in society, right, as we're going to read, right, which is not too much, but we're going to get it all, right. This is heavy information, right. It says the document gap, right. It says the logistical hurdle for the American public is staggering. According to 2026 research from Brennan Center for Justice, approximately 21.3 million voting age citizens, 9.1% of the population, do not have proof of citizenship readily available. The burden is not distributed equally, revealing significant racial and gender disparities, right? Racial inequality and inequity. Nearly 11% of Americans of color lack ready access to these documents compared to 8% of white citizens. The gender barrier, as many as 69 million women have legal names that do not match their birth certificates due to marriage or divorce. Without a passport, these women may be forced to produce a paper trail of marriage licenses and affidavits simply because their bank accounts, simply to keep their bank account open, right? So they're going to make you jump through hoops, right? But now we're getting to, the heavy information, right? It says economic and industrial toll. The American Action Forum estimates the mandate will trigger a bureaucratic avalanche, adding between 33.1 million and 73.3 million hours of paperwork. For the banking industry, compliance costs are projected to reach between 2.6 billion and 5.6 billion. These costs are unlikely to be absorbed by the institution alone. Economists warn that banks will likely pass expenses to consumers, though through higher fees or by closing accounts that are high effort to verify. Meaning, if you can't find your paperwork or it's taking too long in order to verify your information, they're just gonna take your money and close the bank account. It says Chassie Ray Winkle, president of Devon Bank, warned that the policy risks pushing millions into unbanked population, forcing them to rely on predatory lenders, right? So they're going to ultimately kick you out, right, if you're not able to verify, your citizenship, right? You're not going to be able to have a bank account. You're not going to be able to buy and sell if you don't have a bank account, right? Whether it be, a one of them online app bank accounts, or whether it be, just a regular traditional banking account. This is where things are going, and this is the part that I want to ultimately focus on, right? It says a fundamental shift. Currently, U.S. banks take roughly 3 minutes to verify a new account under federal law. Under the proposed order, that process could balloon to over 40 minutes per customer. For the 3.8 million citizens who have lost their documents entirely to theft or disaster, the order could present a permanent lockout from the U.S. financial system, right? Permanently being locked out, right? If you don't have, that e-passport, right? Because this is what they mentioned, right? Having an e-passport. That's what they're going to ultimately, be using, right? It says, let's go back up to it, right? It says the new mandate, right? The new mandate is expected to explicitly exclude real IDs, which prove lawful presence but not citizenship, requiring instead a U.S. passport, naturalization certificate, or birth certificate, right? So a U.S. passport, right? When you look at the U.S. passport is the new version of the U.S. passport is what? The e-passport, right? Now give me 1 sec. I was looking this up earlier. This is a screenshot that I had taken. I was looking it up while I was at work on my break. It says, this is a question I asked, right? And this is on the regular Google, what platform. It says, do the new passports have chips in them? Right? It says, yes, new passports, often called e-passports, contain an embedded electronic RFID radio frequency identification chip, typically in the back cover or the data page, right? So they're sitting here saying, hey, you got to have this, right? In order for you to have a bank, right? You got to have this e-passport, right? Which has a chip in it, right? This is just a step in the direction of forcing everyone to get the C-hip under their skin, embedded or implanted in their body, right? It says this chip stores the same biometric information found on the passport's data page, name, date of birth, and digital photo to enhance security and prevent forgery, right? It says identification passports with chips feature a small gold rectangular camera-like logo on the front cover. Purpose: the chip stores a digital photograph and personal data which can be scanned at the border control to confirm the document's authenticity. So this is what they, this is where it's going, right? That if you don't have this e-passport, you're going to be locked out of the financial system, right? Which again is Revelations, the 13th chapter, and verse 16, right? It says, and he causeth all, right? In the KJV, it says, and he causeth all, both small and rich, great and poor, free and bond, right? Because it doesn't matter, right? They're saying it, you got people who are, their shit got stolen, right? You got people who, they might have lost it in a fire because their house went up in flames, or, whatever it may be, right? They might have lost their storage, right? There's multiple different scenarios, right? People losing their identification, right? People, never getting one, or, having to buy one, they're just waiting for the process. There's many different scenarios, man, right? If you don't have, the ability to verify your citizenship, you're going to be locked out of that bank account. It very well could be taken away from you, man. And the way that these banks are moving and how these devils move, they might just take all your money. I think it was I'm going to say 2-3 years ago, you had like Wells Fargo, Chase, someone, Bank of America, so on and so forth. They were taking thousands and thousands, tens of thousands out of people's accounts, and they were just disappearing. Right? You can look it up. That woman that lost, I think it was like 60,000 or something like that, right? From Wells Fargo. They just took her money. Just took her money. And there was many different accounts like that, man. Right? 2023, 2024, So it's not far-fetched, right? These things actually happen, right? So what do you think they're going to do? Right? They're going to take your money and you're going to be locked out the system because you don't have that e-passport. And eventually it's going to move to the point where you're going to have the RFID micro C-hip, right? Embedded in your skin, because that's the ultimate goal, right? And we know that Esau, he has, he moves in gradualism, right? Different phases, right? First it was the real ID 2020, right? And then what? He moved to now it's you need these passports, right? What's the next step after that? Oh, but you can lose a passport, right? You can lose this and the third, and on top of that, having to verify all your information and scan the thing and have it upload. Well, you can just wave your hand over, right? It'll be much faster, much easier. You don't have to carry this, you don't have to carry that. You can just worry about your luggage, right? See, these are the things that Esau is going to, try to, say to the masses, which is going to get a lot of people, right? Convenience, right? These people are lazy as fuck. They don't have any patience, right? So he's going to play on that fast. This is a microwave society. He's going to play on that. Oh, we'll make it faster. We'll make it more convenient. We'll make it, easier for you. And these people are going to eat it up, right? It says right here, it says he calls it all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, right? And I meant to do, a lesson on it, but, Spirit, didn't hop on me to, go into it. Another brother went into it. But they're offering chip implants for, when women go to get, breast, implants and stuff like that, right? To make their, just kind of like a BBL, but for the breast. When the women get those, they're offering to put a C-hip in there so that way you can track, whether if there's any recalls on the silicone or whatever, this and the third, right? So it doesn't matter about where in your body you get it, right? It's about you receiving it, period, right? And we know that a lot of people are going to take it, man. A lot of people are going to take it. And ultimately, what does that do, right? It ultimately allows for Esau to rule over you perpetually, And that, again, right, that's ultimately going to lead to you being put to death, man. This is a device that Esau is going to want, to put, in your body, right? When you go into that word slide, when you go into that word mark, right, in the Greek, Strong's G 5480, right? Charagma, right? It says a stamp or imprinted mark. A thing carved, sculpture, graven work, right? Something that's going to be ultimately, put inside you, right? And again, this is ultimately, as you read right here, bullet point A, it says, of the mark stamped on the forehead of the right hand of the badge, as the badge of the followers of the Antichrist, right? So you're ultimately, you taking it, right, is ultimately, solidifying Esau as your ruler, man, right? It used to actually have a little bit more, but Esau ultimately, Esau be messing with shit, man. But nonetheless, right? It used to say as a badge of servitude, right? It used to say a badge of servitude. Let's see. Yeah, Esau. Yeah, Esau was messing with the definition, but it used to say a badge of servitude. When you go back to you read verse 16 in the NLT, it says he required everyone, right? He required everyone, right? And that's what's coming, right? Eventually, he's going to make it mandatory, right? It says small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to be given a mark on their right hand or on their forehead, which we know it's in, right? Making everybody take it, man. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to buy or sell, right? Going back to the KJV, verse 17, it says, then that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. So this is the time that we're in, right? Esau's about to move, into the next phases, man. And he's doing it quick, right? He's not waiting for certain bills and policies to be established, right? Even though they're in process, but he's just moving, right? You have over 100 countries, right? I think it was 130, if I'm not mistaken, right? I think it was Elder Apostle Tahar, that he was doing a lesson on it. He asked that question. It was over 130 countries, right, are already either in the process of going digital and or are digital already. Over 100 countries, right? Visa and another, I think it was called Bridge or something like that, right? They're ultimately establishing stablecoin infrastructure in all these different countries, right? Opening up the door for people to use digital currencies, right? These CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, right? Across 150 million different merchants in the world, man. And allowing for that stable coin to be, utilized, amongst different platforms, right? This is where Esau's moving, man. This is how things are. This is where things are going, right? We again starting with the elder apostles, a great millstone through the spirit and power of the heavenly Father Yahweh and His only beloved begotten Son. We've been telling y'all for years, right? That this is where it's going, and see, it's happening, And the message is what, right? That this is gonna happen. This is going down. Don't take it, right? No matter what, do not take the charagma. If you do, the Lord is gonna strike you, with severe judgment, man. Right? First, going into you ultimately receiving those boils. Right? This is Revelation 16 verse 1. It says, and I heard a great voice out of the temple saying to the 7 angels, go your way and pour out the vials of the wrath of the Most High upon the earth. Verse 2. And the first went and poured out his vial upon the earth, and there fell a noisome and grievous sore upon the men which had the mark of the beast, and upon them that worshipped his image. Right? You're going to be a sore, grievous sores. Right? Let's go ahead and go into that. Right? It says grievous sore. Let's see if we can find that word sore. Right here. Helkos, right? Strong's G 1668. Helkos, right? A wound, especially a wound producing a discharge, right? Pus, a sore, an ulcer, right? And this right here, man, a Yahweh Shemel Shai is going to make it bad, man. It's not going to be, some little, what I mean? This shit can, happen all over your body, right? The Lord can strike this and make it happen all over your body, and multiple people being around each other that have this, it could, create disease, right? Can, and start killing you faster, right? If it's not taken care of and it gets infected, it could turn to gangrene, now now your body parts are starting to die, and, you're getting very sick, These are all possibilities. Look at the root word. What does it say? Yeah. So it's, an ulcer, a pus, right? A wound producing a discharge, a sore, right? That's just one judgment that's going to come upon the people that take this charagma, man. All right, let's jump to Revelations, the 14th chapter, which is the ultimate judgment, right? This is Wisdom of Solomon. It's like it. Revelations 14 and verse 19, verse 9, it says, doom for worshipers of the beast, right? It says, and the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, if any man worship the beast in his image and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of the Most High, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation. And he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. Meaning you're going to be destroyed via ICBM nuclear missile, man. That's that fire and that brimstone, right? Those ICBM nuclear missiles, right, coming in and destroying you, man. And or the laser beams from the chariots coming and zapping you and turning you into dust, right? Like you've seen off of the movie War of the Worlds, man. Which is a very spiritual movie, right? Go and watch that movie if you haven't already. Hey, Yahweh Shemel Shah is not playing with nobody, man. Right? There's great death, great death, right? That is reserved for those that receive this charagma, man. And if you take it, right, no matter the circumstance, because we understand that Esau is going to make things look, really bad, right? He's going to crash this system, and tell you, hey, in order for you to, keep your job, in order for you to keep your bank account, in order for you to keep this or this, that, and the third, or whatever you may say, right? You have to take this charagma. You're going to have to take this. You're going to have to take, but don't take it, man. Trust and believe in the Heavenly Father, Yahweh, and His only beloved begotten Son, Yahweh Shai, all the way into the end, and the Lord will make a way for you, man. But if you take it, hey, that's on you. And you'll see the Lord's got great judgment reserved for you. So don't take the charagma, man. Right? It's a time to repent and turn to Yahweh Bashim Shah. But that's all I got, man. Lord wills, at a final, Lord will straight to the point. I want to give all praise, honor, glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shah, Bahashem, Rachak Kodash, that belongs to the elder apostles, the elder bishops, the elders of Great Millstone. Till next time, I say Shalom.